we'll actually be live in just a few seconds here.
We do have everybody, Roger. Just join the call.
Okay, yeah.
Try not to slide the thing because that rubber sound.
Hello and welcome to our live telephone town hall meeting this afternoon. Thank you for being on. You're on with, of course, the Association of Professional Flight Attendants, and this is a live telephone town hall meeting. We'll have Laura Gladding, your National APFA President, here along with a half dozen negotiators to answer your questions. If you have a question you'd like to ask live in this forum, please press 0 right now or at any time during the call. I'm going to repeat this introduction just once, and then I'll turn it over to Laura to get us started. Again, welcome to our live Association of Professional Flight Attendants telephone town hall meeting. We'll have Laura Gladding, your National APFA President, here along with a half dozen negotiators to answer your questions. Now, if you have a question you would like to ask live in this forum, please do press 0 right now or at any time during this call, and we'll get as many of you up to answer your questions live as we can. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce Laura. Laura, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time to join the call. Really appreciate your work. Your role is a very, very important part of getting this contract ratified, and hopefully we'll be able to do so because I have to say it has far exceeded even my wildest expectations on a value that we could get before arbitration. So first of all, I guess I should really introduce the people on the phone. I want you to know the last few weeks has really been very, very hectic and frenetic for the negotiating committee. Most of the committee is traveling home today after not being home for many weeks. They're exhausted, but we do have a few people that made it to their destinations and are able to join the call. So I'm going to ask that those negotiators introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Margaret Barnes. I'm a DFW Vice President and also a board-appointed member of the JNC. Welcome.
Hey, everybody. My name is Paul Hartshorn. I'm a Legacy U.S. Airways flight attendant based in Philadelphia. Welcome.
And this is Rick Knuth, Legacy U.S. Airways, Charlotte Base.
This is Roger Holman, former MEC President at U.S. Airways.
This is Randy Troutman, Miami International Base President and International Negotiator for the Association of Professional Flight Attendants, American Airlines Legacy.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Roger. I didn't realize you were whisking off to join us, too. I know everybody really kind of rushed to get on the call. Really appreciate it. We also have Joe Burns. He's the U.S. Airways AFA staff attorney who's been helping us through negotiations, and we could not have done this without him. Do you want to say hi, Joe?
Hello, everybody.
All right, and I have Rob Clayman from Guerreri, Edmund Clayman, and Parcelli in Washington, D.C., and he is the negotiations counsel for the APFA. So we had both sides equally represented. People worked together in a way that I never imagined possible, and we're very, very happy with the outcome. Just to get a little bit of background on what happened yesterday and why it was one of the most frenetic days, we had come to an agreement with the company, and we were very happy with the outcome. There was a lot of work to put together charts and questions and answers and a whole bunch of other things that you'll be seeing hopefully within the next 24 hours. And then yesterday, as we were presenting the tentative agreement to our executive committee so that they could pass a resolution to send it out for ratification to the membership, and we had our entire leadership there, the board of directors included, and they too were passing a resolution. Just prior to those resolutions going to the floor for a vote, we became aware that Delta raised the raises for the Delta flight attendants effective April 1st, 2015. And the reason why that was significant was because we were really trying to achieve not only industry leading, but we wanted to exceed the Delta pay rates. And I don't know about most of you, but I've spent a very large part of my career asking for Delta wages because they've always managed to keep unions out by keeping their wages up. Now, they don't have any work rules, and those whatever their manual says can be changed in a heartbeat. So the company's response was always, we'll be more than happy to give you Delta's wages, but we're going to give you their work rules. And we had a great big no thank you. So we far exceed them in all of our work rules and other parts of our contract, but their wages were always something that were very hard to catch. So when we came to our agreement on Friday afternoon, it was understood that we would get Delta plus 3%. Somehow that leaked back to Richard Anderson, the CEO of Delta, we imagine, because before we put our resolutions on the floor for a vote yesterday, we became aware that Richard Anderson announced a pay raise for the Delta flight attendants starting April 1st that would give the top of the pay scale a 4% wage increase and the other pay scales 3%. Now, we did expect that at some point next year Delta would come up and meet us, but we never expected it to happen yesterday or to happen in the way it did. So we immediately, after we picked ourselves up off the floor, went and called Doug Parker and Scott Kirby. I texted them immediately and said, we have to have a conversation. There's been a new development. They were as shocked as we were, and I obviously had to ask them to give us more money. And that was a difficult ask because I knew that we got far more from them than they had planned on giving us to begin with. But to the company's credit, within an hour, having called in every executive vice president in the company and really putting the sixth floor in a frenzied mess, they came back and said they would match the Delta wages pay scale, and they would do so effective December 1st when our wage rates went into effect. So we managed to get another, whatever it turned out to be, 12 or 13 million a year at that point, and we were very, very happy to do that. And then we went back in and, of course, put the resolutions forward, and they ratified. The Joint Negotiating Committee had a huge task in front of them. They had to negotiate a joint collective bargaining agreement, and we all know what's happened at other carriers and how long that can take. They had to blend cultures and contracts and work with people they had never met before. And again, as I said, they did an incredibly, an absolutely incredible job. But they also had a large sum of money that they had to decide where to put that money. Now, I don't think there were two people on the negotiating committee that would have put the money in the same place. I don't think there were two people on our board or executive committee that would have, and there probably would have been very few matches of the membership. So we had to kind of come to terms on where we could make improvements, on which contracts, try to level them, and try to make it as fair as possible, and ensure that at the end of the day, we would all wind up in the same place. So it was a very, very difficult task, and I think that they did an absolutely outstanding job. But it may explain some of the things and questions moving on. Let's see. I think that pretty much covers it. I just want to tell you again that this contract far exceeds the industry. I'll give these numbers a little bit. We determined that to take the aggregate value of our contract, all right, the value of our contract, and what money needed to be added to the contracts of the U.S. Air American contracts combined to bring us to industry rate, we determined we needed to add $61 million to our contracts. All right? We also knew that the company was hell-bent on getting rid of profit sharing, and we had to take a look and see what was the most favorable price we could get for the profit sharing. And that would be by looking at the disclosure statements and other statements from the bankruptcy and the company's projections on earnings. And we determined that that number was somewhere around $50 million a year. And that was, in the event that nothing happened with ISIS or any other disruption. As we all know, our industry is incredibly fragile. So that brings us to $111 million. So that was really, we knew we had to get higher than $111 million to make our contract industry leading. That was our bar. We wound up adding $193 million to our contract. So we exceeded our own goal by $82 million. I just wanted to give you an idea of the types of numbers we're talking about before we get started. So hopefully you had a chance to look over the hotline and digest it. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Hopefully you have the hotline in front of you, and that will trigger your questions. We certainly want to make sure that you have all of the information necessary to help us achieve our goal and answer all the questions. So with that, why don't we just go straight to questions?
Sure thing. Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you everybody who's on with us. Again, if you would like to ask a question, many of you already have, but go ahead and push 0 on your phone. We'll get you up to ask your questions live. Again, push 0 on your phone if you'd like to ask a question live in our forum. Our first live question is going to come from Nelson. Nelson, you're up.
Hi, Laura. Thank you for all your hard work and the board and the JNC. My question is, if it comes down to, unfortunately, a no vote, I'm reading all different things as to what goes to arbitration. Is it just financial issues that go to arbitration, or could there be other issues that go to arbitration?
I'm going to ask Rob Clayman to answer that question because he says it most eloquently.
Yeah, hi. The way it works, and let's just take a couple steps back, is the arbitrators are governed by the negotiations protocol agreement that the parties reached back in, I think it was in January. And in that agreement, there are two kind of standards that bind the arbitrators and limits their discretion or judgment into how much they can award in a collective bargaining agreement. The first standard really acts as a floor. The arbitrators cannot go below that standard. And that standard is that the agreement that the arbitrators establish in their decision cannot be of less value than either the current American agreement or the current U.S. Air agreement. It cannot go below that. So that's really the floor that governs the arbitrators. There's also a ceiling, that is, which the arbitrators cannot go over that ceiling. It is a cap, in essence. And the standard that establishes that ceiling is that the contract has to be market-based in the aggregate, which means when you look at Delta, Continental, and United, which are the other three network carriers, you look at their contracts or work rules, and you determine item by item what the average cost of that item would be as applied to American. And the calculation that has been done for that number, which the parties are, I would say, definitely in the same area of agreement, and we really don't have any argument that would bump this number up very much at all, if at all, is $56 million. That's the number Laura mentioned. So the floor is what you have today. The ceiling is $56 million, but there's also the issue of profit sharing. So it's really $56 million plus profit sharing. The arbitrators could not go above that. So what happens is that the company, there's no doubt, they're very, very committed to getting rid of profit sharing. And so the question for the team was, how do you turn profit sharing into fixed, permanent wage increases where instead of the risk of taking on the risk of the industry, of the airline industry, which really is the basis for profit sharing, obviously, rather than do that, we thought and really very strongly believe it would be better to turn that kind of fluctuation into something that's fixed. And what is fixed in this agreement is we have valued profit sharing at $50 million a year. Now, if you look back at the profits of the airline industry over the last 20 years, which we have done, you would see that there is virtually no likelihood that if the arbitrator in an arbitration were to try to determine the value of profit sharing, would he come up with a number anywhere near $50 million. But that's the number we came up with, and that's the one number we used to judge what would be market plus profit sharing. You add the $50 million to the 56, you come up, or not 56, I'm sorry, it's 61, actually. That changed yesterday. So if you add the 50 to the 61 million, then you have $111 million is market plus profit sharing, and profit sharing now being a fixed value. So then the question for the committee became how much of a premium could we get, and that premium, as Laura just said, is $82 million on average a year. Now, specifically to your question of what would go to arbitration, the only issues that would go to arbitration are the issues that would have been left open had we not gotten to a TA. So we went through the contract and reached resolution on every item except the big economic items, And the big economic items are the ones that formed the last move in these negotiations, in the last round of discussions. And when I say the big economic items, we're talking about wages, premium pay, including expenses, vacation, sick, the defined contribution plan, and the health plan. Those 6 items together represent about 90 or 95%, about 95% of the total value of the contract. So the arbitrator, if he were to if the arbitrators were given the task, if it went to arbitration, what would happen is they would say, you would go into arbitration and you'd have to say, okay, what is our position in arbitration as to what we think is market plus profit sharing? And what I've just explained to you is a very liberal view, and we really are not in a position, and don't think we could credibly argue, much more than $111 million. At that point, it would be incumbent upon us to reduce what we would have as a TA and reduce the $193 million that we now have in the TA and shrink it to fit within the parameters of the arbitration, which again is that ceiling. And that ceiling is $111 million. So we would have to take out of this TA approximately $82 million to fit within the constraints of the arbitration. And we would somehow have to come up with something which would look completely different in how we have a whole lot less money to allocate to those 6 categories. Less money for wages, for premiums, for vacation, for sick, for defined contribution, and for the medical plan. And so for us and the people on the committee, that would be, and maybe this is a little strong, nightmarish, because we've got $193 million on the table, and we think there is absolutely no way that we would even get close to $193 million if we went to arbitration. We believe it's $111 million. Now, what I haven't talked about is what the company's position would be. The company would say, okay, yeah, it's $61 million to get to market at plus profit sharing. But you know what? If we look back at the last 20 years in the airline industry, and profits, to generate $50 million, American and U.S. Air have to have a profit margin of somewhere between 8 and 9%. That's an area, a range of 8 or 9% of the net profit margin before taxes that has rarely been achieved by any airline in the airline industry over the last 20 years. And in fact, those 2 decades have been marked probably by more losses than by profits. So our argument, is, the company would say, is it's not worth $50 million. We think, and I very much imagine that their position would reduce that probably in half, and I would say probably at best. So they would come in and say, profit sharing is $25 million. The market piece of it, in terms of the comparison with Continental, United, and Delta, is 61 plus 25. You're at $86 million. And that's the risk, is that you're looking at an outcome where the company wins at 86. We, quote, win at 111. And in either scenario, we have left tens of millions of dollars. We have lost tens of millions of dollars by not ratifying the TA. And the worst case is that the arbitrator agrees with the company, and they agree with the $86 million number. And now what you're looking at is that we could have had 193 or $107 million more had we ratified the agreement. I mean, I just want to say this is not intended to create fear or anything like this. This is to convey the fact that you have one of the not easy, but a very clear choice. That you have what we are presenting is an incredibly good contract that stands on its own and is worthy of ratification on its own. But when you add in what's the alternative, it becomes all that much more compelling. That ratification becomes all that more compelling. So I know that was a long answer, but I think it's important to know, to get a full picture of what we're looking at.
That was a very long answer. Yes, you're right. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. And Lenny Aragema from the team has also joined us. Lenny, I don't think his microphone is open. He's based up in IOR. He's been a long-term union advocate on the AA side. We'll take the next question.
Sure thing. Thanks, Nelson. Appreciate that question. Let's get to our next live one from Jason. Jason, you're up.
I was questioning about in the reserve section, it stated we were going to go to the rotational reserve, but it didn't state what our reserve guarantee was going to be for those that will be on rotational reserve, and what is the ceiling for rotational reserve if there is one.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the rotation reserve, and then I'm going to yield to Paul, because Paul is really our reserve specialist here. And I can say that when we took our survey from the membership, we tried to do that and, again, combine the cultures. And so we picked a new rotation that really isn't going to kick in probably until, well, at least for some time. We haven't completed the implementation schedule. So that's one big piece, and we've been working on that. There were long meetings yesterday, and hopefully that will be concluded next week. So before you vote, you will all know what's being implemented. But suffice to say, probably the rotation piece is not going to be implemented until we have a combined workforce, and that would not be probably for about 2 years. At that time, and between now and that time, we'll be hiring a lot of flight attendants. So I don't think people should start worrying about getting sucked back onto reserve. This is something that we'll have a little bit better handle on in the future. We did do some analysis if we changed the rotation reserve sooner, but we did not do any analysis on going out in the future, at least not a really deep dive into that, because it was a little bit hard to predict when we weren't sure that would be happening. So the other piece is that, at least on the U.S. side, it's going to be prospective as far as once it starts. People who are hired and going on straight reserve, we believe. So we're going to try really hard not to pull people back onto straight reserve. So anyone who's on the property on the day of ratification would not be pulled back in. But Paul, can you answer the other questions?
Sure. Hey, Jason. This is Paul Hartshorn. I'm a flight attendant, in case you missed it, based in Philadelphia, part of the JNC. The reserve guarantee is still going to be 75 hours. I'm not sure if Laura covered that or not. But it's the rotation reserve, as she said, is going to be a ways off. The implementation will be down the road, so don't expect much change. I'm assuming you're from the U.S. Airways side. Don't expect much change for a while. As she said, we did do some models about where rotating reserve would reach. Don't forget that the landscape of this airline is going to change. I mean, we have 60-plus wide bodies on order. We will, by the time the reserve is implemented, have people transferring in and out of bases. So I don't think it's something we have to be too concerned with right now. We are going to have a lot more information for you down the road, though.
Did we get your question answered, Jason?
The ceiling part of it is vague, but that's because the models aren't in place for when it's going to be implemented. But the reserve guarantee part was answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jason. We're going to go right to our next question from Karen, but a reminder, you can push 0 to ask a question in our forum here. Karen, you're up.
Hi, this is Karen from Philly. Laura, I have a question for you. Did you know then, or did you just realize that you signed away your members' right to meaningful way when you gave Parker binding arbitration?
No, when I signed on for binding arbitration, what I did was I assured a merger. Because absent the agreement on binding arbitration, we would not have had a merger. And that was not just a demand from the U.S. Airways executives at the time, but they really needed to get a plan of reorganization to put before the creditors committee. Because if you recall, we went into bankruptcy. The U.S. Airways executive team approached the 3 unions on American's property and said, I want to merge. I want to do it in bankruptcy. It's never been done before in the history of any bankruptcy in the aviation industry or otherwise. And here's what we need. And they needed to show fixed costs for 6 years in order to put their plan forward and to have the creditors committee come in and take a look at their plan of reorganization. You have to understand, the creditors committee was sort of overseeing the bankruptcy, but they didn't have the right to just put a plan forward. They were really protecting American. And in bankruptcy, American had the exclusive right to file a plan of reorganization. So it was really very, very tricky. I mean, it was like a hostile takeover, if you will, on the part of U.S. Air. So the pilots and the TW did something very different than the flight attendants. They signed on to 6-year deals. So they have parameters. They have sort of a cost structure that they have to stay within. Right now they're negotiating to move some furniture around, but we didn't sign that kind of contract because we thought at the time that United Continental would achieve a deal similar to the one that the United pilots did, and we were afraid that we were going to get stuck in a lower wage rate for 6 years. So we struck a very, very different kind of deal, and I think now we all realize that that was really a very smart thing to do. But the other side that was insisting on either a 6-year deal or a backstop of arbitration, and in the case of the pilots, it's both as well, is that they wanted to see what the costs were. They were not going to, and the way the expression we used back then was, we were not going to let U.S. Airways in the room, into the creditors committee room, to show their plan unless and until they had a complete plan. And the big part of that plan were labor costs. So that we had to say that we're going to go with a market based in the aggregate at the end of the day, whatever that market rate is, and there was a floor and a ceiling to that at the time, and one could predict what the future would be. And we said that if we couldn't get there, we'd have a backstop of arbitration. So I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I make no apologies or excuses for accepting the arbitration. It was a really smart thing to do. We are far exceeding. The results of having agreed to arbitration and cut the deals that we did have put us in a place where we're far now looking at a contract far above industry average. And so I think, again, no apologies, no regrets. We did the right thing, and we're now seeing that the proof is right here in the pudding in this TA.
All right. Thank you very much, Karen, for your question. We've actually got another Karen in line next. Karen, you're up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of questions on the Legacy U.S. side is questioning whether they are still going to get their profit sharing for the year of 2014 if we ratify this by December 1st. And
yes, they will. Okay, let me answer that one first, Karen. They will absolutely get the profit sharing check in 2015 for the year of 2014. So yes, they will get their profit sharing check.
Okay, thank you. Secondly, everyone is up in arms because there's no signing bonus. Was that ever mentioned? And thirdly,
I'll answer the signing. Let me answer the signing bonus one while you think. We always look for signing bonuses. We always look for retro. We always look for any big pockets of money to get flight attendants some immediate relief. With the case of the U.S. Side, they're getting a $3,000 transition payment. That transition payment is there to help defray the cost of medical benefits that they would incur, not in 2015 because they'll still be under their original health care plan, but moving forward. So that really was a huge chunk of money if you think about it, $3,000 per flight attendant, and that will be paid off right after ratification or shortly thereafter ratification. As far as signing bonuses, yes. I mean, again, you have to look at it this way. We had a huge bundle of money. We had to decide where to spend it. So we wanted to spend it in a way that was most meaningful to the most flight attendants. And that usually means in regular wage increases, meaningful wage increases that will stay there, that will carry on to vacation values, that will carry on to sick values, and into 401k values. And so that's where we put the money. And on the U.S. side, as you know, you're going to get a 14% immediate increase. On the American side, on average, it'll be 9.2% increase. And we thought that was the place that it was most important to put the money. And as I said in the beginning of the call, I don't think there would have been any two negotiators and probably any two people in leadership that would have put all of the money in the same place, but we had to make some very difficult decisions, and I think we made some good ones.
All right, thanks.
I'm sorry, the U.S. Airways flight attendants, 12.4% immediate increase, American 9.2%. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks for your questions, Karen. We're going to get right to our next one from Kurt, and we do have plenty of questions in line, but a reminder, you can push 0 to ask a question in our forum. Kurt, you're up.
Thank you. Laura, great job, by the way. I'm really impressed by this negotiating team. It's a great contract. My question is, where are we in per diem? I didn't see that addressed anywhere yet, and maybe the numbers aren't there yet, but just kind of curious where we are per diem-wise, time away from base. Thank you.
Okay, hold on one second. I don't want to make a mistake. So I'm going to look it up right here, and I'm going to tell you what it is.
Thank you.
Per diem is immediate, right after signing, date of signing. Domestic is $2.10. International, $2.40. 1/1/2017 would be up to $2.15. Domestic, $2.45. International, and on 1/1/19. $2.20 domestic and $2.50 international. And if your next question, Kurt, is that, did we match the pilots? We did not. And would we have liked to? Absolutely, we would have. But again, it was our decision to take that money and put it into real wages. But there are certainly improvements, especially on the AA side in per diem.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And Kurt, appreciate your question. Going to go to Greg live next. Greg, you're up.
Hi, this is Greg Bentley calling. I'm a Phoenix-based flight attendant, and I'm calling in regards to the transfers within bases, and it states in the highlights that it's upon full operational integration. Will that mean that payrolls have to be integrated, or once we have a single operating certificate, what kind of timeline are we looking at? Because I know many of us, myself included, are wanting to transfer from legacy U.S. bases to legacy American bases.
Thanks, Greg. That's a great question, and I get that question all the time. We have no qualms about people transferring bases. The problem is more on the company's IT side. And I know Roger and I have both started conversations with the company about this, and we'll continue to have those conversations, but I don't want anyone getting any kind of, false hopes or confidence that we can do this any quicker than the company can integrate it. There's sort of a couple of steps here. After we get a joint collective bargaining agreement, we still have to wait for that single operating certificate. The company's hopeful they can get that like in the second quarter of 2015. And I had believed up until probably 4 or 6 months ago that would be the trigger for the, all of the fences, and the fences are only there because of IT issues, would come down and everyone could transfer. But the reality is that the company has a FOS system, their computer system, that needs to be integrated before they can do that. And so the company is absolutely laser focused on getting all of the passenger service systems put into the FOS system before they start implementing pilots or flight attendants. They estimate that they're not going to complete that until probably another year. So it wouldn't be until after that they would load in the pilots and then the flight attendants. So then and only then would they be able to merge the operations. So it's likely, or at least a strong possibility, that we won't be able to do any transfers until all of that happens. Again, I will continue to talk to the company about possibly doing this earlier, but you're right. A lot of it has to do with the payroll issues and IT issues.
Great. Thank you very much, Laura. And thank you, Greg. Appreciate you coming in with a question. We'll go right to our next live one from Joe. Joe, you're up.
Sorry, I was eating. This is Joe from JFK, and I had a question about the reserve and the modifications for it as far as will people be grandfathered in. They were talking about that on Facebook about people being grandfathered in, which I didn't see anything that said that, as far as the first 12 months being straight reserve.
Yeah, that's pretty much true because nobody's going to have to serve that if they're on the property as of the date of ratification. When we'd start that on the AA property has not been decided. That'll be part of the implementation schedule. But Paul, do you have anything else you want to say on that?
No, that sounds good.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Joe. We'll go right to Mike's question. Mike, you're live on the line.
Okay, I'm a Charlotte-based flight attendant. Couple questions. Where did it go? I'm sitting here the $3,000 transition for healthcare costs, is it going to be taxed or not? And then the 6-year scale on the U.S. side actually shows a pay decrease. Is that correct?
All right, I'm sorry. What was the first question was?
The $3,000 transition for healthcare, is it going to be taxed?
Okay, yes, it's going to be taxed as like a lump sum. Am I correct on that, Joe Burns? Yeah, I think I am. And as far as
yes, that's correct. It'll be treated just like any other bonus, and it'll be taxed as a regular bonus.
okay,
Yeah.
and then the six-year scale.
Right. The 6-year scale was a sort of a anomaly. That was the 1 year that it didn't appear that they were going to get a raise under the U.S. wage rates. So what the company has agreed to do, and there are exactly 18 people that fall into that category. So what the company is going to do is just artificially inflate their hourly rate for that period, that 6 year of payment where they wouldn't get it, and actually just cut them a check for that. It would be cut in the beginning of the year based on their earnings from the last year, but of course adjusted if they flew up. And we're working on all the details of that. I was hoping to get all 18 names by now, but I have not. I'm looking at my cell phone to see if they came in, but we're going to be contacting those people and telling them how they'll be receiving the money. But we are aware of that, and it was always intended that they'd be made whole.
All right. Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you, Mike. Appreciate your question. We're going to get to our next live one from Nikki. Nikki, you're up.
Here's Nikki. Hi. Thank you so much, everyone, for all the hard work that you've done, and thank you also for being so expeditious in getting us this information. I know our membership is very grateful that you didn't keep people hanging. I have 2 questions. I'm wondering if you can let us know, explain to us the background for the defined pension plan for the legacy AA flight attendants, the 9.9 contribution, so that we can explain this better to our membership as to why, we aren't receiving that same defined plan. And then in regards to the 3% that we receive on the legacy side and the 2.5% match, does that mean that we receive automatically 3% from the company, and if a flight attendant contributes just 2.5%, then they will receive a full 5.5%? Thank you very much.
Okay, so there were a couple of questions in there, but they were great, and I'm glad you asked these, because what had happened was the elevated 401k company contributions were negotiated during the CLA, and that's the CLA being the Conditional Labor Agreement with the U.S. Airways Management Team, and it was in exchange for the freezing of our pensions. And what we did was we kind of calculated what rate of a 401k company contribution would sort of make us whole for trading off our pensions. So we made that agreement, and we held on to that in these negotiations. We also felt as though the U.S. Airways flight attendants needed a bump up in their 401k contribution, so they went to the 3% company contribution with a 2.5% match. So you're correct. If you contribute 2.5, you will get a 5.5% match, because the company is 3, and then they'll match you up to 2.5. But the other thing we had to look at is leveling. And because the U.S. Airways flight attendants were moving from one medical plan to another, and the AA flight attendants were staying on the 401k plan, there was a leveling of costs and value. So we took the difference in the value of our 401k, made sure that the U.S. Airways flight attendants got the $3,000 to offset, and that's their transition payment, and increase their 401k. I didn't do the math. I think Joe Burns worked tirelessly on this. So, Joe, if you can explain it better than I just did, why don't you jump in here?
No, I think you've explained it great, Laura. That's exactly what we did. The committee was very mindful about making sure that the benefits were and the cost and the value was distributed equally among the employee groups. And when you look at the numbers of the difference between what the legacy AA gets with their age-based contribution, which is higher, and if you compare that to the continuation of the healthcare and the healthcare transition payment, what you'll see and what we did see was that that came out equal, so that both groups were receiving the same total economic value from the agreement.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and appreciate your question, Nikki. Thanks so much for being on with us. We've got our next one up from Sam.
Yeah, how are you? Sam, Philadelphia. I've got a question about vacation. In this new contract, do we still have the ability to do the vacation gifting?
Okay, Paul, do you guys want to grab that? Or Roger?
Yes, Sam? Sam?
Yes, I'm here.
It's Roger Holman. Yes,
Hi, Roger. How are you?
We still do have the ability to maintain that.
Okay, and the same rules apply?
Yes, the rules that are applied to that are based on the company policy, and and I know that a lot of people are really interested in that, and I'm grateful that we were able to hang on to it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sam. Going to Roger live next. Roger, you're up.
Hi. Yes, I am. Hi, good afternoon, Laura. This is Roger Smith from Miami International. I had a question. I see that you're going to do away with the pursers on narrow bodies in the Caribbean, Central America, certain cities in South America. How are you going to do this? And what is the premium pay going to be if we fly the number one? Or, I don't really understand that part.
Okay. Randy, can you join in there?
Yeah. Hey, Roger. It's Randy. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Randy?
Good, buddy. Yeah, basically, there's going to be a premium on every single airplane, and that would be from their 190 all the way through 777. And the lead pay is going to be structured so that every domestic aircraft, every international aircraft, narrow body in the system will receive a premium. I don't have the chart in front of me, but it varies anywhere from the smallest premium on the 190, which is what Airways flies, up to $750 purser money. Some of the lead pays on the narrow bodies if I can draw a distinction between purser and lead would be just number one on an airplane. Purser would be confined to the IPD flying, or what we know on the Legacy AA side as IPE flying. On the Legacy US side, it would be the transoceanic. And that premium for purser would be $750. The premiums for lead, like a 777, if there was one in the Caribbean, or a 76, would be $650 an hour. And then I believe, I'm just going off the top of my head, Roger, the 75, okay, I believe, on the international side is $375. I think the lead pays on the 73s, I believe they're all going to be posted, so you can refer to that. But every single number one position will have a pay associated with it. And this will eliminate the bid denials and so on and so forth, which has been very problematic in Miami.
The only exception,
yes, that's true.
Yeah, the only exception to all that, Roger, is that the transcons with the 3-class service, the premium service transcons, there will be purser positions, and the pay would be at $475. And Randy nailed all the other purser pays exactly.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And one more question, Laura. Yes, perfect. One more question, Laura. I see a lot of people very unhappy about the 40, hard 40. Can you explain that? Because I really don't understand what that is.
Yeah, and I'm asking people not to call it a hard 40, and this is something that we got from the U.S. book, and nobody seems to think it's a problem. The 40 includes vacation, sick, and a whole bunch of other things. The thing is that you can't bid less than 40 hours. I'm going to ask either Paul or Joe to jump in and say how it works in reality, because to say hard 40, it makes it sound like you'd lose your job if somehow you flew less, and that's not the case. I don't think they've had anybody actually leave the company for not achieving the 40. So, I don't know, Paul or Joe, can one of you explain it better?
Hey, it's Paul from U.S. Airways in Philadelphia. Yeah, it's not really a hard 40, as Laura said. Sick and vacation is inclusive. If you take a bid leave for the month, that does, you still satisfy that 40 and everything like that. The thing is, though, is that the trip trade system that we'll be implementing, as well as the ETB, or as HIBORD as it's known on the American side, those trip trading systems and ways to change your schedule, as well as PBS, will not let you drop below 40 when you're bidding. So you will always have to maintain that 40, but it is inclusive of sick and vacation as well. And I believe going forward, once we are on one vacation system down the road, on both Legacy AA and Legacy US have all the same benefits of that, you'll be able to split your vacation differently at Legacy American, so that will help you greatly as well.
Laura, can I jump in? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
All right. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. Sorry. I just wanted to add in one feature that we have in the TA as well, which is if you have 7 or more vacation days in any given month, you will have a priority to get vacation low, meaning that if you bid, for example, 10 vacation days, that would satisfy all your flying for the month, and you would have the priority to get that off without flying that month at all.
Randy?
Yeah, I was actually going to expand upon what Joe said as well. But, however, one other thing, we haven't discussed the implementation, and I think it's premature at this stage of the game to assume that that's going to go in effect anytime soon. I would envision that, and Joe, maybe you can correct me, I don't want to speak out of turn, but that would more or less be in conjunction with PBS, given the parameters of that. I don't know if we've even broached that subject, have we?
No, we haven't, but we've had some internal discussion about it. I had spoke very briefly with the company about it, and that will be something that will come in later on the AA side. So nobody is going to tomorrow have to change their habits, but they'll have plenty of lead time, and they'll fully understand what it really means. And I think Randy's right. This is something that would probably most likely be pushed off to PBS because at that point you'd have the different vacation system and the ability to make as many splits as they're discussing.
I think also on the positive side of the hard 40 is there's going to be no reduction in benefits and medical and so on accruals, and that was a big thing. With you get penalized on the AA side when you fall below that 420, and that was something we all wanted to match with the Airways side. So, although the 40 is going to come into play, there's a lot of benefits to it as well.
All right, thanks so much, everybody, and thank you very much, Roger. Appreciate your questions. Let's get our next live one up from Kimberly. Kimberly, you're up. Go ahead.
Hi, Kimberly, domestic, Dallas-Fort Worth. You did answer a couple of questions, and I apologize if I'm repeating anything because I didn't get a call and I got started late on it. My questions were, how long does the contribution continue? If it's a limited amount of time, or is it going to be until we negotiate a new contract? And can you fully explain override pay? My other questions while I was on hold, you guys answered. I just want to make sure I have the facts when I'm explaining things to people. Thank you so much for all your work. I know it was hard and long and tiring, and we do appreciate it. Even if we're not 100% happy, that's never going to happen with our work group. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think the theme here is that you have to look at this contract as the totality contract. Look at the thing on the totality. There's nobody who's not going to be better off tomorrow than they are today. As far as the enhanced 401k, the 401k will stay as negotiated for the life of the contract. So that's in place for that long. Override is really the international override you have now. So if you're flying international leg, you're going to get paid the $3 override. There's an enhanced override under IPD flying, which is International Premium Destinations, and that would be $3.75 an hour. So that would be premium destinations like in Europe, Deep South, and Asia. And the reason why is in exchange for that, and I happen to think this is good news, it's because you're going to have to sign in 15 minutes early. And I know how people feel about sign-in, but here was the thinking. This is the first time where the first carrier, first union, that has been able to get some sort of foot in the door for some payment or recognition for sign-in. So, let's say you're flying a 10-hour leg or an 8-hour leg, you're going to get $3.75 an hour rather than $3 to kind of compensate for the 15 minutes additional in sign-in time.
All right, thank you very much. And Kimberly, appreciate being on. We've got our next live one from Ray. Ray, you're up.
Hi, Laura. Ray Bayless in Chicago International. Quick question on pay protection. It looks from the language like we are going to get pay protection similar to what U.S. Air has, and that'll be full sequence pay protection, and also do it kick in right after ratification. And good job for all of you, by the way.
Okay, thank you, Ray. And Ray is a former negotiator, so he knows the difficult task we were handed. And yes, pay protection is like U.S. Air, and I'm going to let, somebody from U.S. Air answer that. I don't know if Joe is still on. He had to get on the flight, but Paul, are you still there? Or Rick? Rick knows it very well, too.
Yeah, this is Rick. Hi, Ray. Yes, the pay protection provisions operate as they do under Legacy U.S. Are you familiar with that process?
I've read through it. Yes, sir.
Good. Okay, good. Then I won't get into the weeds on it then. But I hope that answers your question.
And it will take place right after ratification. It's not contingent on anything.
No, we don't think we're going to have...
Again, we're still working on the implementation schedule and timeline, as Laura indicated before. So there's going to be some key dates. Obviously the data signing, the first bid month following data signing, when PBS is implemented, single operating certificate, and full flight attendant integration. So no one's able at this point to pinpoint when that will take place, but those are the key dates to look out for this and a whole host of the other issues too.
All right.
And we understand. We know, Ray. Hey, I just want to say we know how important this is, and although there will need to be some IT adjustments, we'll be pushing for implementation of the trip pay protection language as soon as possible.
I really appreciate that, because that's a pay raise for us here at IOR, is pay protection. The other thing is, does this mean OEs will go away? Because a trip is a trip is a trip.
Randy?
I could take that one, Laura. Yeah. I mean, Ray, if you're looking at from the standpoint, there's no sick cap anymore going forward. So basically, There really isn't going to be, that's the whole reason we preserved, as we called it, the OE experience in the LBFO going forward, since we gave away the incentive pay, or we negotiated it away, unfortunately, or they stole it from us, if we want to look at it. So we did preserve the OEs for the purposes of sick. So yeah, there'll still be the opportunity to pick time up from each other. It won't necessarily be in the form of an OE. It'll be credited time.
That's fine. I think it's about time they went away, and you all did a wonderful, wonderful job from just looking at the highlights, and I know how hard it is to, decide where to cut. So thank you again for everything, all of you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ray. Appreciate you being on. Let's get our next live one up from Jan. But this is a last call here for questions. We still have a few of you waiting in line to ask questions, but this is your last chance to press 0 to ask a question. If you'd like to ask a question yet in the time we have left in this forum, please do press 0 on your phone right now and make sure you get in line to ask that question. We're going to go to our next one from Jan. Go ahead, Jan.
Hi, this is Jan in Philly. I think I have my question answered already. The override pay of $375 is only Europe, South America, Asia. The $3 continues with the Caribbean, correct?
That is correct, Jan.
Okay, but I got one more question that has come up during the course of this. The $3,000 that they're throwing to the U.S. Air people for health care, does that mean that we're losing our 90 and 100% for health care when we kick over to you?
Yeah, we're going to come on to the American plan, which is predominantly an 80-20. There are a few options, but the 90 and 100% plan, we suspect they would be gone in 2019 under the health care exchange anyway. Joe, do you want to explain that a little bit?
Sure. Let me just say a little bit about this. The committee really wanted to be able to and fought to be able to keep the 100% 90 plans and really to extend them. Because that was very important to the flight attendants. The situation we faced is that the company was absolutely adamant about moving to a single company plan. The majority of company employees are in the single company plan, and all of the unionized work groups, as they reach contracts, are moving to the single company plan. And ultimately, in order to reach this deal, that was the tough decision that had to be made. Laura's correct that in the Red Book, we had negotiated Side Letter 5, which took into account the fact that under the Affordable Care Act, in 2018, an excise tax would be imposed, and those plans were, the 100% plan was going away, and the 80% plan would have been substantially modified, or the 90%, would have been substantially modified and probably eliminated at that time anyway. What we negotiated there was that the value had to go back to flight attendants, and that's what we did here, both in the form of the increased 401k match and also in terms of the transition payment and then also the general wages as well. But it was, it was just a tough negotiations. But I think the committee's concern was trying to mitigate the impact as much as possible.
And again, Jan, you're going to keep your health care through 2015.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Jan. Thanks for being on the call. Let's get right to our next caller. It is Donald. Donald, go ahead.
Hello.
Hello. Want to thank you for your time and for negotiating this contract that we have, the tentative agreement that we have right now. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Laura, for your time today. I do have a three-pronged question. Once again, my name is Donald Warren. I'm a purser out of IMA International. And my three questions today, number one, I just want to confirm that we, new hires that came in 2013, we are still under the furlough protection. I want to confirm that with you. And
okay, you know what, Donald, can I ask you to let me answer them one at a time because my memory I'm getting old here. Yes, we have actually enhanced furlough protection now. So yes, you're covered, and yes, furlough protection has improved with our new scope language. Okay, question number two.
Okay, my second question, are pursers that are currently pursers at the moment, will we have to re-interview in order to maintain our purser position at the moment, going forward?
No, you will not. No, you will not. But if you reach the last step in disciplinary action, you might be have to step down. But no, you will not have to reapply. Okay.
My final question is, what considerations, what was taken into consideration as it relates to new hires or more junior staff as it relates to pay and even quality of life such as layovers? Just wanted to know what was the I guess what was the process behind where we are now with the TA?
Well, I think what we tried to do was make sure that the percentage increases were spread evenly across the board. The reason why the final step got a step up is because, frankly, Delta, did that yesterday and we were able to match it. But we wanted to make sure that everybody had pay increases. Obviously, everybody's going to enjoy the new trip pay protections, scope protections, and everything else that we have in the contract. We're very, very cognizant of the fact that the new hires are working on a very, very meager salary, and it was very important to, enhance their work lives and give them a little bit more money to live on until they can achieve further. Nobody's asked me about this, but I think it's important to note that we kind of cut off the last two steps for pay increases. So whereas you used to go to step number 15 in order to catch the highest wage rate, it's now at 12. We went from 12 to 15 back in 1990.
Just,
1995.
he's just not as good as you.
Hey, Randy, you have to unmute. Randy,
can you mute your phone line, please?
Got it. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So we went from the 12-year top of pay to 15 years in 1995. We are now one of the first carriers that have now pushed that back so that people will actually get to the top of the pay scale earlier. This has tremendous value to it, and it's something that we've always been trying to achieve. So I think, overall we really tried to reach out and give everyone some relief, but we were very cognizant of the new hires.
Okay. Again, thank you for your time, and thank you for negotiating with the New American.
Great. Thanks, Donald. Appreciate you being on. Let's go to our next live one from Jorge. Jorge, you're up. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Jorge, Miami International. Hello, Laura. Hello, Randy. My question is the following. If you're a purser qualified and also language flying deep south or Europe, will you be able to get the two paid? Because you continental side, you get one or the other. I just want to make sure that in the future contract with the TA that we get the purser paid, language paid, and all the above. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you get it all, Jorge. You get it all.
You do, Jorge.
Okay,
and in
thank
fact,
you.
if you fly purser, language to your destination, and plus the $3.75 for IBD flying, you're really bumping your salary way up. So you're in a very good place.
Thank you so much, and a great job. I appreciate it, all you've done, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. Thanks for being on the call. Let's get Holly up next. Holly, go ahead. You're live.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, this is Holly from Los Angeles. I think you guys did a great job, and I have 3 questions. I can make it really quick or one at a time?
One at a time, if you don't mind.
Okay. One, people are asking about PVDs.
Okay, great question. All right, so we've increased the vacation days from 28 to 35. We are going to the U.S. model. But we are keeping our vacation system until we hit PBS. So you will still bid vacations with TripMiss with the same allotment that you do today until we go to PBS, and that includes keeping your PVDs as is.
Mm-hmm. And how much will they pay?
The PVDs will be paid just as they are today.
Okay, I will let them know that. Secondly, are we keeping our high time turns like LA Columbus?
I don't know the scheduling, but I imagine there would be nothing in this that would prevent that. Randy, can you answer that?
Yeah, we have and Paul could speak to it probably better than me, but I believe we have a cap of 859. What are they worth, Holly?
We have, I think, 4 different ones. We had Columbus, Indy, Nashville, Chicago, Orlando.
Right. Will they be? Do they exceed 859 round trip? In
there will be no exceptions over 859.
No. Wait, let me just add to that, Randy. You'll be able to do a one-day turn that exceeds 859. So if that's what you're referring to, that would be an exception to the 859 rule.
Oh, okay. There will be exceptions. I will let them know that. And then my question personally was, did you ever consider negotiating insurance benefits as a negotiated item?
You mean insurance benefits for retirees, those benefits that were lost, or?
No, I mean our medical. I mean locking our medical into our contract.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was one of the things that we talked about earlier. The company had a couple of things they wanted very badly, and one was they wanted to buy the profit sharing and said they'd pay a premium for it, and they did. And the other thing was they absolutely wanted everybody to migrate to the American plan. They wanted one plan, and that's where it is. Now, there are some caps on ours for contributions and whatnot, so all of that is there, but we did not lock it into the contract.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Holly, and thank you for all of your answers, everybody. Let's get right to our next question. It's Joey. Joey, go ahead.
Hey, my name is Joey. I am a Charlotte-based flight attendant, Legacy U.S. Airways. All my questions really were answered, but I did mishear something at the very beginning of the conversation. I think Laura said something about all U.S. Airways flight attendants receiving that $3,000 transition stipend from our Legacy U.S. plans to the American plans in 2015. Is that correct, or do we get to keep that $3,000 and we get to keep our U.S. Airways plan in 2015?
Okay. Actually, both, but I do want to say one little thing. All right, so you're going to keep your medical plan as is for 2015, and if you use the medical, you will get the $3,000. But if you're a flight attendant who, is married to somebody who had better insurance and you don't take an insurance plan, you're probably not going to get the $3,000. I think it was just for people on the medical. Am I correct about that, Joe?
No, actually, wait, I am here. I was just trying to unmute. Yeah, all flight attendants will receive it. There wasn't a distinction drawn between whether or not you were in a medical plan or not. It'll be similar to the bonuses in the past, where it would be paid to employees who are active on date of ratification, who are not on certain specified types of leaves.
All right, great. Joey, did we get your question answered?
Well, I mean, I guess what I'm referring to is in the highlights email, it says we have to change from the Legacy U.S. plans within 45 days of, I think it was date of signing, in order to receive that $3,000 bonus. That's where I'm confused.
No, that's not true. You get the $3,000. You keep your plan for 2015. You switch to the American plan in 2016.
Okay, great. That's great to hear. I was very confused about that. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much, Joey. Thanks for being
on.
And
we'll clarify that on the highlights, Joey.
All right, and let's get to our next live question. It's Isaac. Isaac, go ahead.
Yes, this is Isaac from Los Angeles. You just answered my question about the cap for 8 hours and 59 minutes of flying per day, but you said there was an exception to that rule. Can you elaborate on that?
Joe, can you elaborate? Is it a two-leg 859 is the exception on a turnaround?
Hey, this is Paul. I can jump in here if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Okay, so there's going to be a new hours of service chart for the combined company. It's going to list your based on report time and how many flights you have per day. That will be your maximum scheduled duty period, and that will be in a chart easily read for flight attendants to see once we're on the same hours of service. There is a note at the bottom of the chart that protects these high time turns for both Legacy American and Legacy U.S. Airways flight attendants. If the block time of the turn is over 8 hours and 59 minutes of block time, it will be limited to no more than 2 live segments, and there's also limits on the schedule on-duty maximum as well as the limit you can go to in actual operation. So yes, those turns on both sides of the fence will be protected.
All right.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Isaac. Appreciate that question. We'll go to our next live call. It's Gary. Gary, you're up. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Gary Case. I'm a Dallas-Fort Worth International flight attendant, and just got back from Tokyo, and glad you guys got this all done. We are experiencing some rumors out here on the line that the pilots are trying to negotiate using flight attendant jump seats for commuting and whatnot, even deadheading. And that was like a crazy thing that just went all over the airplane. And so I threw a few questions at some of the pilots on board, and they kind of confirmed it. So I was concerned about that. I do have a legit question about the TA. But
can I answer that one first, though, Gary?
That would be great.
Yeah.
I didn't expect one.
No. The pilots attempt to get our jump seats every time there's contract negotiations. They don't understand why, if there's an empty jump seat, they can't sit in it. We have very clear language that the jump seats on the airplanes will be filled by American Airlines flight attendants, period. So I assure you that there will be no pilots in the jump seats.
No pilots in the jump seats. Okay, the other thing is can I just hear those percentages that you said that since Delta threw in the percentage that they were going to get a 3% raise and we were going to match that?
Yeah, I think what we were talking about was we were trying to get ourselves in a place where we could, with great confidence and with a clear margin, be industry leaders in pay. And the company agreed at the final hour of negotiations last week that they would bring us to 3% above the Delta wages. Now, we were very happy about that, and so when we were meeting yesterday, we find out that Delta has offered a 3% across all pay scales and a 4% across the highest pay scale, which Delta, again, is the only airline now that has a pay scale that ends at 12 years. Now it's us and Delta if we get this ratified. So we went back to the company to ask them to make sure that we matched Delta's. Delta's raise is not until next year, April of next year. We wanted that money, sooner. Well, we would have taken more money, of course, if we could have gotten it. And the company did dig deep and agreed to give us those wage increases that Delta will get in 2015, give them to us as of December 1st. So overall, our wages reflect a 3% above Delta in all of the wage scales except the 12th year, which is a 4% increase.
All right. Thank you very much. And thanks, Gary. Appreciate you being on the call with us. Let's get to our next live question from Laurel. Laurel, you're up.
Hi, Laura. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your hard work. I think the gentleman just asked the question. The Delta pay raise, and you were able to, renegotiate that last night for us. Thank you. Is that indicated on the fact sheet that we were given? Is that the pay increases printed right now that we're looking at?
Yes, it is. And that's why it took us a while to get some information out. We had to go back and redo all the charts. But that's what you're looking at right now. Those pay rates are domestic pay rates, so the $3 override or premium pays would go on top of that.
Awesome. And a little bonus for me when I heard that you are going to allow the exception for the long term. Bravo. We thank you for that out of LA. You guys have a good night.
Great. Thank you very much, Laurel. Appreciate you being on. We've got our next one from Tim. Tim, go ahead.
On rotating reserve, it says what will happen at 1 year, you'll do this, at 2 years. But it says at 4 years, you'll go to 3 off and 1 on. It doesn't clarify. Is there any upper limit? I'm at 30 years. Will I have to go to reserve?
I don't think anybody at 30 years, regardless of your base, will have to go to reserve. But again, that's going to be determined when this gets put into play, and we're thinking it probably won't be put into play until a combined operation. So, and we're hiring new hires all the time. But yes, it is, 1 year straight reserve, 1 on, 1 off, and then 1 on, 3 off until you can hold off completely. But again, this is going to be prospective. So people hired after the ratification date would be doing the straight reserve. And again, especially on the U.S. side, I don't think you'll see any change until combined operation. We haven't completed the implementation schedule, but that's our thinking. And so I don't think you're going to see any drastic changes, well, at least for quite some time, on reserve. It'll be a very different landscape, lots more new hires by the time it comes to your base.
All right, thank you very much, Laura, and thank you, Tim. Thanks for the question. Thanks for being on. Let's get to Sarah's question next. Sarah, go ahead.
Hi. I am calling about galley pay. Is there any increase in our galley pay?
Some galley pays. Let me get to the galley pay piece. They call it AFS lead. So the galley pay, where we had it at 63 cents, I think, and 88 cents, it'll be going up to $1 and $1.75. There are some routes, I'm going to be honest, there are 2 little things that we're still discussing with the company that wasn't quite clear, and we're still working on that, but you will overall see increases to the galley pay, yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your question, Sarah. Let's get Kathy up next. Kathy, go ahead.
Hi. Sorry, I'm driving, so I have it on speaker, but I have it on my lap. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound okay, actually. Go ahead.
Okay. I just had a few questions. I saw the bullet points last night, but something about hotels being American hotels. That was I have 3 questions, so can you answer that? It was very vague to me. We obviously have a very big discrepancy in the type of hotels and how, we call them good or not good, quote unquote. So what does that mean?
Well, all it means is that we're going to keep the system we have at American, because at American, we have a say in the hotel pick. We're consulted. We go on the site visits, and we're not going to be put in a different hotel than the pilots. It's sort of like a me too, unless we say we want a different hotel. We also have been very successful in keeping our hotels downtown. If we looked at the U.S. Air side, they had a metropolitan area language in their contract, which could be a little bit dicey when you talk about being near a strip mall in Paris or outside Paris rather than downtown Paris. So we're keeping our language. It's been pretty successful. We're not always happy with our hotels, but we've been very successful in getting the company to change hotels and lock in hotels that are more satisfactory. So we are keeping our language and policy in place.
Okay, good. Also, there's a lot of all-nighters out of Charlotte. That's where I'm based. I'm sorry, I forgot to say that. So everybody's interested to know about that. I saw it said no overnights less than 7 hours, and obviously we have some trips that are like that right now. So does that mean behind the door 7 hours? What does 7 hours actually mean, since there's always that question when it comes to pay and whether or not we take a cab or don't take a cab and all that kind of stuff. So are all-nighters going to still be in effect, and how will they be affected?
Okay, I'm going to have Rick or Paul answer that one. They're more familiar with your all-nighters.
This is Rick. I'll be glad to give it a try, Kathy. Hi. I'm not sure I completely understood your question, but as far as all-nighters go, there was nothing in the crew accommodations section that would affect all-nighters, and I'm going to say this even though I may not have understood your question. The 8 hours behind the door wouldn't apply to an all-nighter because, as you know, you're on duty. The 8 hours behind the door, the duty break limitations only apply when you're off duty. So since by its terms you're on duty, that has nothing to do with it. Now, please feel free, if I'm on the wrong track, please tell me.
Well, because, I see we're on continuous on duty all night, but I think there's always a question that we don't count when we do an all-nighter. Like, we don't get to take a we don't get to take a cab if we waited more than 10 minutes for a hotel van. And then sometimes it takes an hour by the time we check in, by the time we block in before we get to the hotel. And then we have maybe 3 hours at the hotel, and then we have to leave again. But is that going to change at all with this new contract, or all-nighters are kind of an entity in itself, and it doesn't really fall under those parameters?
No, it does, and I think one reason why Laura wanted me to answer the question for you is because I like doing all-nighters too, so I get it. But just to be clear, and you'll see it when we can finally get out the exact language of the TA. The beginning section from the LUS Old Red Book talked about the Union Hotel Committee, and that's what's going to be now run by APFAs. They've always done a great job in the past, and will continue to use the policy and practice in selective hotels. The other language, as you'll see when you get to it on lodging, transportation, et cetera, those were separately agreed to provisions that will continue from the Red Book with which you're familiar, and that includes the cab and transportation. The 10 minutes and the 20 minutes will continue to apply as they have. I hope that helps.
Okay. Great. And also, my last question, I'm sorry, is there any extra pay for going through customs in Canada, or is it all just the way it is now where Canada doesn't count as international? Because a lot of times that takes a lot of time going to and coming from one of our cities in Canada.
Yeah, Canada will still be considered domestic, but Mexico will now be considered international, which is a change on the American side.
Great. Excellent. Thank you very much, Kathy. Appreciate you being on and asking your questions. We've got our next one up from Leon. Leon, go ahead.
Yes, I'm just calling. I'm Leon from JFK, and the pay protection, that was just kind of brushed over because the guy understood the pay protection procedures. But for the American side, can you kind of explain the pay protection?
That's an excellent question, Leon, and I was thinking the same thing. So, I don't know, Paul or Rick, can one of you guys walk them through the pay protection, because it is just the best in the industry?
Hey, Leon, it's Paul from U.S. Airways JNC in Philadelphia. The pay protection is much different than what Legacy American Airlines flight attendants are used to today. It will bring protection to you when your crew is substituted. It will bring protection to you when you become illegal to originate a trip through no fault of your own. Additionally, it will give you protection on your last trip of the month or last series of the month, and that is a change from Legacy American because it is not just the last 5 days of the month. It is the last trip or series of trips of the month that you will receive pay protection for should you become illegal for, and though, again, does not have to be in the last 5 days. So there's a number of different branches of the pay protection and the rescheduling information that Legacy American Airlines will be changing to. We were able, for our U.S. Airways people listening, we were able to preserve our Red Book rescheduling language, which we were very, very happy about. And make no mistake, it took us a long time to be able to secure that. I'm very happy. Our team was awesome. We did it. And we'll have a lot more information for you going forward, but you will be received pay protection for things such as illegal to originate a trip through no fault of your own, last trip, last series of trips of the month, as well as if your crew is substituted out, you will receive pay protection. So I hope that helps, and I'm happy to give anyone more information who would like it.
Great.
And Leon, we'll be putting up examples, but Paul, can you give like one example and what the obligation or lack of obligation would be?
Sure. Let's take illegal through no fault of your own. If you do have back-to-back one-day turns, your first one gets back too late and you are illegal, FAR, illegal to originate your trip the next morning, and let's say the trip the next morning is another one day, you are now illegal through no fault of your own for that trip, and you will receive pay protection for that. Another example would be your last series of trips of the month. If something happens and your trips are back to back to back in the last series of trips, you will be pay protected for the value of all those trips.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And Leon, thanks so much for being on. We're going right to Elroy next. Elroy, go ahead. Elroy, are you there?
Hi, this is Martin Elroy from LaGuardia. I
Go
just
ahead.
had a couple questions. In regards to holiday pay, I noticed they mentioned $75. Is that $75 per trip or per day? And also, with reference to the pay scale, I see you guys are mentioning 12 years, but the scale that came out is 13-year cap hours. Can someone clarify that for me, please?
That's right in the first day of your 13th.
Okay, first of all, with regard to holiday pay, it's $75 per holiday. So if you come in, if you have a trip that touches Christmas in any way, you're paid $75. Same thing for Thanksgiving and New Year's. With regard to the pay scale, you get your last raise on the first day of your 13th year. So that's how it goes. So I guess it could be considered 13 years. You achieve it after 12, but yes, the first day of your 13th year.
And Laura, this is Paul from Philadelphia. Can I jump in really quickly on the holiday pay for the U.S. Airways people?
Sure.
Okay, just as a clarification for the U.S. Airways side of the airline, our holiday pay in the current Red Book, if you were on a layover on Christmas Day and you had, say, a 35-hour layover in a city and you did no flying, you were not benefiting from holiday pay. This holiday pay is allowing anyone that's away from base on a trip that touches Christmas to receive the pay, just as a clarification.
All right, thank you. And thank you very much, Elroy. Appreciate your questions. We're going to get Pamela up live next, but please try to keep it to just one question per person from now on. We're getting up against our time limit, and we're going to try to get to as many questions as we can. Our next question is going to come from Pamela. Pamela, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Pamela from JFK, and I want to thank Laura and the whole team for doing such a great job. My question is, once we start preferential bidding, will there be any limit to the number of hours that we can pick up? I mean, we'll still be able to pick up trips?
Absolutely. There will be no limit.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you, Pamela.
Let's get right to Sean next. Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, my question, I'm LAX-based domestic. My question is regard to the trip trade system, the green light, red light. Is that going away the day before restrictions? Our trip trading system is so restrictive. Is there any change to that coming?
Yeah, big changes. There'll be a whole new trip trade board. And again, I'm going to have to defer to the U.S. Air people on this one, but you can forget all those lights and all that confusion. That's fortunately going to be a thing of the past. Rick, can you talk about that?
Yeah, just as far as PBS goes, I'll try to help, and actually maybe a little bit to the previous call. There are parameters within PBS as far as how much you can fly or how little you can fly for purposes of bidding. So just to make that clear, there's, Laura's answer, of course, is correct, but just for the LUS side, if that triggered any confusion, there are bidding windows within PBS that we're becoming familiar with. Of course, the LUS side hasn't implemented PBS yet either, and that leads to answering this question. The scheduling systems will remain in place, so your system on LAA, just like LUS, will remain in place until implementation of PBS. Once PBS comes in, then as Laura also accurately said, then you're going to see significant changes to that. Laura, if you want to address the time windows on PBS for LAA, you can pick up from there. But that's where we are, and I don't know how far down you want to go on PBS.
Yeah, PBS is going to bring. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I just wanted to add to the answer. In terms of the red light and so forth and green light, what we've replaced that with is it's going to be an automated trip system, trading system called TTS. which is going to be a very powerful system that's going to facilitate all these types of trades. But one of the things that it has is it has parameters that are built into the contract about when you can drop trips, and that's going to be based on that's going to be based on the percent of open time, a number that's fixed in the contract. So it's no longer going to be up to crew scheduling to say, based on their determination, whether or not a trip can be dropped into open time.
Okay, and just to comment a little bit on PBS, as far as on the AA side, implementation probably will take a while because they're just not ready to feed the system. As I said before, the company is laser focused on getting their passenger service system. We're not in a tremendous rush to get the PBS because we have a lot of education to do, and we need to get out and make sure that everyone is comfortable and fully understands it before we implement. But I do want to say this. I was very active, as many of you remember, in 1993 for the strike, and I know that we've always resisted PBS in the past. This is a whole different animal. This is a system that has tremendous transparency, and you really get to build your own schedule. And on the U.S. side, I was doing some base visits when they were doing their practice runs with PBS, and I can tell you they were very enthusiastic. I think you guys will really like it. That being said, it's going to be tremendous change, and we're going to take the time necessary to make sure that you fully understand it and the system can be integrated into ours. We're thinking that it probably won't come until the combining of the operation, an operation meaning the LUS and LAA side combining, because at that point, all the flight attendants from both carriers would be put on the same system. So that could be a ways off.
Got it. All right. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Sean. Appreciate you coming in with that question. Let's get to Rich live next. Rich, you're up. Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for all your work and all the time and effort that you put into solidifying this contract. I wanted to touch on a question that has been occurring in social media, especially from I'm Phoenix-based, so the old AWA group, part of the Legacy U.S. Airways. Social media, they're talking about the arbitrator, and the arbitrator on social media, and I kind of wanted to spell this rumor, was the arbitrator involved in the entire negotiation process, or when they come into this, they will be selected either by APFA or they'll be selected by the company, and who is in charge of doing that selection to go forth if for some reason it has to go to arbitration?
Okay, Rich, that's already been decided. When we did our agreements last year, the company got to pick an arbitrator, the union picked an arbitrator, and then the two arbitrators that were selected by the company and the union selected the third arbitrator. So we already have our panel selected. And again, they would only come into play if for some reason this contract did not ratify. But again, as Rob very clearly outlined earlier what the parameters are, they will have a floor and a ceiling. And they really are not authorized to go beyond industry rate in the aggregate. So, and these are three very experienced interest arbitration arbitrators.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Rich. And appreciate everybody being on the call. We're just about at our 1.5 hour mark where we need to cut off the call. So we're going to take one last question from Antoinette. But I wanted to get everybody an email address that they can send questions to if they didn't have a chance to get their question answered live in this forum. So I'm going to give it to you now, then I'll give it to you after we get Antoinette's question answered. And you can email this email address with your question. The email address is factrep@apfa.org. That's FACTREP, factrep@apfa.org. And I'll go ahead and read that email address again after we answer Antoinette's question. Antoinette, you're up. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, Antoinette from LaGuardia. Thanks for taking my question, and thank you for all your hard work. I like what I see at the first glance. I have a question. I would like to know, Laura, I heard you make a reference to the fact that you've enhanced the furlough protection. Does that mean that anyone, if you can expound on it, does that mean that anyone that is here, the day of signing, is protected under the furlough protection language? And how long is this contract for? Thank you.
Okay, the contract is a 4-year deal with a 4-year reopener. And the furlough protection is you're protected until 12 months after the last implementation of PBS. So nobody can be furloughed as a result of PBS until 12 months after the last implementation. So let's say it's implemented on the AA side in 2 years, it would be 12 months after that. But could you talk a little bit about your scope, Rick?
Sure. In addition, hi Antoinette. In addition to what Laura said, is we also picked up the LUS scope language, which deals with when there's a merger, transaction, or selling or buying of the company. The heart of that section, and I'm trying to go quickly because I know we're about out of time. The heart of that section is what's referred to as the labor protective provisions that in Reader's Digest version make it prohibitively expensive for the company to engage in furloughs. It just is too expensive to lay people off and have to pay them instead of getting work out of them. So we picked up that. And then lastly, we also picked up a provision that applies to everybody, that there be no furloughs for 12 months following the implementation of PBS. So if you do the math out through PBS, there'll be nothing as a result of any scheduling changes that would create any furloughs either. I hope that didn't raise more questions than answered, and I know we're running out of time, so I hope that helps.
And Antoinette, I was just told that I misanswered the question. I thought I answered it correctly, but it's 5-year contract with a 4-year reopener.
Great. Thank you very much, Laura. And thank you, Antoinette, and thank you to the rest of everybody who's been listening on our forum today. We went a little over an hour and a half, answered a ton of questions. But again, if you didn't get your questions answered, here's that email address that you can email again with additional questions. It's factrep@apfa.org. That's FACTREP@apfa.org. Factrep@apfa.org with additional questions. And I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Laura Gladding with some closing comments. Laura, go ahead.
Okay, I do want to encourage everyone to get your question asked because it's really, really important that you make a very informed, cast a very informed vote. And I know there's a lot of concerns and there's a lot of change in this contract. We knew that was going to happen, but we understood that, change is good. We wanted a different company. We wanted opportunity. We wanted to have some confidence in our leadership. We wanted stability and the uncertainty gone, and we wanted job protections. And this contract really does provide all of that. But it also introduces some very new concepts that may be a little bit scary. And I know, somebody asked about the hard 40. I've gotten a lot of questions about that. Please don't think of it as a hard 40. Ask your questions. We'll have many examples out there to explain all the different nuances. And I want to thank you all again for taking the time to get on the call, because that's a really, really important step, is to just at least seek out the right answers and not depend on rumors and social media. So I really appreciate it. And the TA call center is going to open on October 1st. So we will have a call center so you can call in and get your questions. And again, time permitting, we'll try to do these telephone town hall meetings, and we have base visits scheduled. I think 22 base visits in a 30-day period. So we're going to be out there. We're going to try to get all the questions answered, be as absolutely transparent as possible. And again, thank you all very much for taking the time.